Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, good evening, everyone. The November 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Allcoffer. Mr. Allcoffer. All right, well, Mr. Baines.
Here.
Mr. Baines here, Mr. Allcoffer here. Ms. Boyce.
Here.
Reverend Keller
Here.
and Mr. Lee.
Here.
All right. We will now need to suspend the rules of the legislature for the purpose of prohibiting public in-person attendance. You have a non-debatable motion on your agenda, which needs a maker and a second. All right. Moved by
So
legislator
moved. Legislator Boyce.
Boyce. Seconded by legislator Allcoffer.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Is there anyone signed up for public forum?
There is not, none are submitted.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer, who is here to present the 2022 proposed Monroe County budget as it pertains to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. We'll have a question and answer session after the presentation. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Presentation mode. There we go. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our 2022 budget presentation to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Do not blink. This is a brief presentation. Looking at how we fund our Department of Planning and Development, there's really just three primary sources of departmental funding. First is real property taxes, which funds almost half the department's operations. We have a community development block grant, which funds the department about 30%. And we have reimbursement from our COMIDA and MCIDC. They pretty much fund the rest of the department, absent a small piece of grant revenue. Looking at the appropriations revenue for planning, on the appropriation side.
Excuse me, Mr. Franklin, the slides aren't advancing.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I apologize. We were trying to troubleshoot the issue here, but
There we go.
could you please go back to the pie chart quickly?
Are you able to see the pie chart now, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so very brief. Monroe County property taxes funds about half the department's operations. Our community development block grant funds about 30% of department operations, and reimbursement from COMIDA and MCIDC fund the rest of the department's operations, absent a small $15,000 in grant funding. On the appropriation side of planning and development, you definitely see year-to-year changes between the department's divisions. Then the planning services division, our 21 adopted budget included $100,000 for a broadband study. That was a one-time expense, so you're not seeing that repeated in the 22 proposed budget. Offsetting that reduction, however, is a small addition, about $20,000 to support our community input meetings that the federal government wants us to have in planning our uses of the American Rescue Plan. Increases within our economic and workforce development division is largely attributable to higher salaries and benefits for the staff. And last but not least, the increase within our community development division is also attributable to higher salaries and benefits, but also to a smaller extent, the interdepartmental charges received by that department. Chairman, that is it. Stop sharing my screen, and when you are ready, we can field questions from your members.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Mr. Franklin. Are there any questions? Any questions for any legislators? All right, well, I'll ask a couple of questions then. And this goes to a similar question that has been asked previously this evening, and that's really the division between any mandated or non-mandated portions of the budget.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, we really did not make that comparison for this budget book. I will have to follow up on that question.
Okay, thank you. And just a general question, at a time in our community when workforce and economic development are so important, I'm wondering, were there any reasons, any considerations for altering or increasing this budget to provide additional support for these functions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have our department heads, Director Anna Liss, who may be able to shed some light on priorities for economic and workforce development.
Great.
Thank you, Director Franklin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also here with our Deputy Director, Rebecca Case-Keiko, who can perhaps chime in as I navigate my response. Can I first ask you to just clarify your question a little bit? I totally understand that, priority economic development, workforce development are of crucial importance over the past year and going into the new year. Do you have anything specific that you'd like me to focus on in my response?
I will rephrase it then a little bit, I guess, to try to get more to the point. I think we all very much recognize that economic development and workforce development are key to the continuing prosperity of our community. And so the budget has remained largely the same over the past couple of years. Perhaps you could point to areas that you feel maybe are not being addressed or could be addressed better if you had some additional funding. What gaps are you seeing that you're not able to fill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer that question. And you're spot on. Of course, it would be lovely to have a lot more resources for the department. We're in a fortunate position given, as Director Franklin pointed out, we staff and administer the work of the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation, as well as that of COMIDA, two separate organizations with their own budgets and resources to help support workforce development and economic development programs in Monroe County. Some initiatives that we have focused on in the last couple of years and that we will continue to focus on going forward through those entities include our Empower Workforce Development Partnership with Monroe Community College. We have a contract whereby we support the MAP program, which is a workforce development program that targets individuals from distressed communities and helps them train for employment in the skilled trades. We also have a program through BOCES where we subsidize the cost of CDL training. Those are just a few examples. Going forward, we're in a strong position to support the county's efforts and objectives in workforce and economic development because both of those organizations are in a strong financial position. We're also in a unique spot right now, given the resources made available to the county through looking in our rearview mirror, sort of the CARES Act, and then looking ahead, the American Rescue Plan. And Rebecca Keiko, our deputy director, is actually in a lead role on the county side with regard to working with the community on determining how Monroe County will be allocating those significant resources going forward. Workforce development and economic development are going to be a key pillar of that going forward. And then I should also mention we just wrapped up a discussion about the Race Commission. That report had some very specific recommendations pertaining to the Department of Planning and Development, specifically looking at how we target our programs in distressed communities, high needs communities, and corridors in Monroe County, and also recommending that we look into making some microfinancing vehicles available to small businesses. That's something that right now we are exploring through the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation. But I'd like to just ask if she doesn't mind, Deputy Director Keiko could talk a little bit about her efforts right now with the American Rescue Plan and how some of that work is going to be dealing with economic and workforce development and this department.
Thank you, Director Liss. I will just simply add that right now we are in the stages of direct communications with the community to identify priorities that the community has identified or believes the ARPA funds should be spent. We have had 2 public forums and approximately 2,500 surveys conducted thus far in this effort. We have found so far that workforce development and economic recovery are 2 high priority areas, and we anticipate once we have final results from that experience and endeavor with the community that we will be looking at some very specific projects that we hope to further fund and further support through funds such as ARPA and perhaps through other mechanisms as are appropriate, as Director Liss had mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Director Liss and Deputy Director Keiko. I look forward to learning more about this very important work as we move forward. Are there any other questions?
Sure. Through the chair to the administration, do you see yourself working or partnershiping with any of the local community organizations with this effort?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Legislator Lee, thank you for that question. I'm happy to report that through the recent second round of the Fast Forward Monroe Small Business Grant Program that was made possible by CARES Act and was preceded by a localized effort that the county executive drove through MCIDC through some zero interest loans. We partnered with the Urban League, with Ibero, as well as with Pathstone to ensure that the $20+ million in that second round of the grant program would be hyper-targeted towards parts of Monroe County where small business owners might have otherwise lacked the resources to access those grants. Perhaps there were other issues like language access barriers, et cetera. That was a really fruitful partnership with those 3 community-based organizations. And we have a commitment to continue partnering with Ibero, Pathstone, and the Urban League going forward on matters pertaining to support for small business and workforce development. And again, I'd love to put my Deputy Director Keiko in the hot seat to perhaps add any color commentary that I may have missed something in that description and response.
Thank you, Director Liss. The only thing that I would add is simply that the commitment that we started with those 3 agencies has continued, and we established those relationships with fully acknowledging that we wanted to maintain those relationships long term, that we had a number of projects on the horizon that we hoped and anticipated we could all benefit from working together. We fully recognize that there are agencies on the ground within the community that are better capable to connect to folks that the county has not historically been able to connect as effectively with. And so we are using all the resources at our disposal and all of the connections and networks that we believe are critical and valuable to reach our community.
Okay, thank you. And I think I just have one more question. Do you foresee, through the chair to the administration, do you see the importance of an outreach connection to some of the hard to reach families in the community with this type of effort?
Deputy Director Keiko is going to answer that question through Mr. Chairman, Legislator Lee. Rebecca?
Thank you, Director Liss. We have recently hired and brought on an incredible new hire in our department, a community liaison, and she hit the ground running. She has decades of experience working within the community, doing community outreach, connecting with coalitions and community events. Everyone knows who she is already. She has attended no less than 20 events already within a short period of time that she's been with us, advocating and sharing the information specifically around ARPA and also some of the other programs that we have within our planning and development department. We are very pleased with her resources that she brings.
Thank you. And I'll just add, it goes without saying that this is something that didn't exist within our department previously. So we're very delighted with this development, and we're committed to shoring up this function going forward.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Legislator Lee, for the questions. Are there any additional questions? Okay, hearing no further questions then, thank you, Mr. Franklin, for the helpful presentation. Director Liss, Deputy Director Keiko, for your assistance. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the September 27th, 2021 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? All right, there being no other matters, the November 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will remain open. I'm sorry, never mind. Stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will be announced.